So I hope you're feeling well. When we begin or end meditation, our practice should have a sort of internal environment that it occurs within. By internal environment, I mean the intention that we bring. So you don't just sit and then get up, and then go straight to whatever. But we are slowing down, and slowing down to pay attention is a real important part of our practice, whether it's in our walking or cooking or eating or sitting or breathing. Even in the practice of right speech, of speaking, one of the foremost ways to practice right speech is simply to slow down the flow of speech so that we can basically think before we speak. And we're not thinking from a place of what I want out of it, but rather what's going to help here. What words will help? That's the sort of intention behind the speech. And we need to stop and slow down and remind ourselves of that before we jump into speech. One of the, some people know about, there's a Supreme Court judge in the United States named Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who died a couple weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago. Anyway, I remember years ago reading a profile about her, and her mind is as sharp as a knife, of course, right up into her death. But one of the really interesting details in this profile was that when people would talk to her and ask her a question, or before she would speak and give her opinion, not on the court, but just in general, like speaking to somebody, there would be a pause. She would pause, and there would be a kind of, the listener would be like waiting, and sometimes the pause would be long enough to think, well, did she hear what I said, or is everything okay? But she was practicing right speech without any Buddhist concept of it, but just naturally, somebody who wanted to make a better world was weighing her words carefully, because she knew that, words do that, or they do the opposite. So if we slow down a little, I think if we slow down a little, we slow down in our speech, in our breath, and in our activities throughout the day. Does that mean you do less? No, but perhaps the focus means that you pause more often. So I think that could help us in creating that, as I said, the environment we place our activities in. And the environment is the intention. So the environment of intention. Just imagine that you're creating a place, a stand to put your activity. And the holder for it, the bowl, the environment, the room, is your intention. And you create that intention by pausing and remembering it. I know I'm on a tangent here, and I'm haven't diving right into the text, but I wanted to create some of the intention around our reading the text and around our sitting, so that when we come out of sitting, we can say, may my practice be a real benefit and extend beyond my cushion. And may my reading of this sutra be a reading of practice that is awakening certain levels of awareness and intention in my mind, so that I can live the practice more fully in my life. This is the space we create. So back to the text, and I don't know if Jonathan is gonna put it up on the screen, but we had read almost to the end of we had read to the end of 12, number 12, and I was about to go into number 13. It's a new paragraph. Yeah. So we'd read about mindfulness of in and out breathing. Okay. We read the introduction, the mindfulness of in and out breathing. When you're breathing in long, breathing out short. Noticing the body. Okay. Noticing feelings in the body. All right. Noticing thoughts in the mind. There's breath, there's body, there's feelings, and there's mind. Okay, and those he gave a short description of and sort of direction while we're maintaining awareness of breath. The awareness of breath then is our anchor and our sort of our seat that we're sitting on, and then we're aware of other things, but we're still seated on the breath. We're still seated. Now I'm on 13, and this is part of the insight that we have here. Okay, this sort of awareness, and I use the word insight very intentionally, and I'll tell you why after we read this paragraph. He trains himself. I will breathe in focusing on inconstancy. Inconstancy, on impermanence, on change. What is not constant? Inconstant. He trains himself. I will breathe out, focusing on inconstancy, impermanence. He trains himself. I will breathe in, focusing on dispassion, literally fading. Meaning the word here, the translation dispassion, it kind of is a bit archaic. Okay, but it really means that, when something is becoming weaker in strength. And that's why in brackets, the translator Bhikkhu was it? Who translated Thanisara Bhikkhu wrote in literally fading. So here it means, you're seeing what's inconstant, you're seeing what is changing, and you're seeing that change is not only something getting stronger, change is something like disappearing. He trains himself, I will breathe out, focusing on dispassion, or the passing of something and the fading of something. He trains himself, I will breathe in, focusing on cessation, on it ending. Cessation is ending. He trains himself, I will breathe out, focusing on cessation, ending. He trains himself, I will breathe in, focusing on relinquishment. Relinquishment is like, I let go of it. To relinquish is to let go, abandon. He trains himself, I will breathe out, focusing on relinquishment. This is how mindfulness of in and out breathing is developed and pursued, so as to be of great fruit, of great benefit. Okay, now I saved this paragraph for this week because it's a very rich paragraph. And the description of what you're aware of in this in and out of breath and the breathing, the awareness of breathing, what you're aware of in tandem as you're doing the awareness of breathing is very rich and very insightful. Because what we're noticing is the change of states. That something arises, okay, and there's change happening, right? Something comes up, like say a strong feeling or a strong thought or a strong sensation. So there's a change in your state. You're like nice and quiet, peaceful. There's music outside, okay? So my state changed. And then there's agitation, or I'm kind of have some aversion to it. So there's inconstancy, there's change, there's impermanence happening. And then the music fades, or my aversion fades, or it changes. There's a fading of the state that I noticed. And then that state, my agitation or the music is quiet now. My agitation is gone. There's cessation. It stopped. Yeah. And then there's just this sort of like equanimity, meaning like I just let go of the whole thing because I see this constant flow of change happening. Something comes up, something passes. Something comes up, something passes. It elicits or it evokes and creates a lot of reaction and thoughts in me, stimulates, there's sensation, there's like a form outside, there's a sensation, there's a feeling, there's an emotional reaction to it. There are thoughts and a sense of self that comes up so fast. And it just passes, that whole thing fades, and all that attachment fades too. And it stops, the whole story there stops. My train of thought has moved on to something else. Whatever I was thinking of 5 minutes ago is gone completely, cessation. And I've also just let go of it. And so the relinquishment is I'm just letting go of the whole thing. So I see it from a bit of a remove of my self-centeredness and the attachment I normally have to my experience. Because I'm always seeing this through being centered with my breath. And the breath is the centering here. By being centered with my breath and stable, I can see this whole selfhood happening. I see it in real time. And I let go of it. There's the relinquishment. By seeing clearly this process of inconstancy in the arising of what? Of the self. I don't buy into the story as much because I see it not only arise and there's a change, but I see it fade, I see it end, and I step back. I say like, there's nothing to hold on to there. Like letting go assumes that there's something you're holding on to and you gotta let go. But when you see the whole process there, including the cessation, the relinquishment at the end is quite natural and almost automatic because there's nothing to hold on to in the first place. That's the insight of insight meditation. It's not only that you're noticing change and you're becoming really intimately aware. Intimately meaning how it's working in yourself. Inconstancy, meaning the impermanence of your changing states. Something happens in your environment, it stimulates something in your mind, in your feelings, in your reactions, in your memories. That whole experience then fades because the time has changed. Time moved on and the experience fades. Could be 2 moments, 2 seconds. The whole thing stops. And there's nothing to hold on to. It's all smoke. So the insight here is that there is never anything to hold on to when we're talking about the self. But to get that real insight, where And when relinquishment or equanimity, or just letting go, to use the simplest term, is just your natural response to this whole cycle of impermanence that keeps going around. Another word for it is samsara. To get to that deep level and practice of relinquishment, of just, letting go and letting it be and not getting caught up, takes a deep familiarity with this whole cycle. The only way to reach nirvana is going fully through samsara, meaning observing moment by moment how the cycle of samsara is repeating itself in your body and mind and environment. And that is where the Buddha then brings into the teaching of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, because that is how, in those 4 areas of a self, a form, a feeling, a rupa, bandhana, and then there's volition, and then there's consciousness or mind objects. In those 4 levels of selfhood, we observe samsara happening, meaning this cycle of impermanence, sensation, arising, fading, ceasing, arising, fading, ceasing, letting go, letting go. You see that cycle happening over and over again, the cycle of samsara in the nature of the self, meaning look at your experience and see that cycle of change happening. Reactions, thoughts, new thoughts. It's always something new going on. Just observe. It's another breath, it's another thought, it's another sound, it's another sensation. Even what you think is more of the same is different same. You watch that cycle, rising, fading, stopping, rebirth, rebirth of self, arising, fading, selfing, ceasing. It's smoke and mirrors, and because it's always, ending in the end. And you can even enjoy the show because you don't have to get so caught up in it. It's when we think it's really real that we get really afraid. Now, it's like watching a horror show. You didn't know it was a movie, you'd die of a heart attack. But because you know it's a movie, at some points you can enjoy it. I mean, I don't like them, but let's just say you do. Yeah, we take this sense of self like it's the real thing. Because of that, when things threaten it, we get really scared. So here, the relinquishment, the letting go, the equanimity, that abandonment is saying it's, this solidity is an illusion. This stability that I'm chasing after of me and mine is an illusion. Right? It's a false belief. And I have evidence by looking closely at my experience of what's really going on. So waking up, that's why we talk about Buddha is the awakened one. He's waking up from this dream of permanent self. And it is just a dream. When you see that it's a dream, then it no longer has to bother you as much. Even if you know it's a nightmare, still really disturbs you, still disturbs you. But by knowing its nature, it's a dream, then you can start to understand its meanings more without feeling like it's a real threat. So this paragraph here that started on 13 and went to 16, and then he says, this is how it's of great benefit. Okay, our practice of mindfulness of breath, and what's real important in our practice of mindfulness and breath is to understand that it's a practice of liberation from the confines and the illusion of self. Mindfulness is not a relaxation technique. It's a path of liberation. And by reading closely and deeply this Ānāpānasati Sutta, we get that flavor clearly. And that's why it's a great benefit. And that's why the Buddha says in the beginning, this is content to me, to heart. This is like, a heart practice for me. Right? It goes straight to the heart. Heart of the practice is liberation from self, which doesn't mean you don't have self. It just means you're liberated from a false belief in self that causes us grief, a belief in unchanging self, a belief in being able to build up yourself in a solid way that will be strong and, secure. There is no secure self. And when we can accept that truth, we can start to explore the changes with less fear. And it starts and ends with our breathing awareness, our breath awareness. Because when things go wrong and you just feel that fear and you feel the threat and you lose your mind and you lose your equanimity and you're holding on, there's one thing you can rely on. If you're alive, you're still breathing. And if you're breathing, you can notice it. And if you notice it, then you'll be able to be a little less preoccupied with some of the things you're holding on to so tightly. So, so it's 8:35, and I know I only got through one paragraph of the Ānāpānasati Sutta, but that one paragraph really does summarize the whole thing that we read up to this point. And I got to the heart of the practice of really what's called insight meditation, or what is also in the Pali of Vipassana. Okay, Vipassana means insight. We talked in the first part of the Ānāpānasati, it was describing some of the concentration levels that lead to rapture. And that rapture and those feelings come from samadhi, shamatha, come from having deep, stable concentration. And when you're not distracted, your energy then increases because it's not dispersed. All the thinking we do disperses our energy. And when we have single point of concentration, it increases the energy in the life force. So you feel a sense of, that rapture, or even just content. And yet it deepens through insight of this process, this cycle of samsara, so that we can have a insight into the nature of self. That insight is then liberating. That's the point of it. And insight is not knowledge. Insight is liberating awareness. That's the definition of insight in a practice way. It's liberating awareness. Okay? If it's just, you read it in a book or in the sutra and you don't experience it in your own practice, then it's knowledge. And you can explain to me all about impermanence of self. And that's great. But it's not going to free you from your own suffering. Liberating insight has to come from knowing that in your own body and mind. And that's Vipassana. Yeah. So, how that is then looked at very deeply and traced in ourself is through the 4 foundations of mindfulness, where, the Buddha describes how you place that awareness in these 4 frames of reference. It says here in this sutra, the translation, or the 4 foundations of mindfulness: body, feelings, desires, and then finally a lot of different thoughts that we have. So we can spend some more time reading that. But now I want to shift to the third part of our meeting. And I'll take about a few minutes now until 9. And here, if anyone has something you'd like to ask, or either from the past weeks that we've met, or from your own practice, or from tonight.
I'd like to ask a question about impermanence and meditation on impermanence. And that is that I a lot of times feel discomfort when I'm meditating, especially on my upper back, and it doesn't seem to go away. So I seem to experience permanence. And it kind of seems to distract me very much, so that I don't feel this sensation that comes and then it goes away, but rather I feel a sensation and it's uncomfortable and it's constant throughout the meditation. So what do you think I should do about that?
Yeah. Permanent pain. Yeah, that's definitely an issue. More, I want to talk about it just in terms of the issue being what to do with physical discomfort. What to do with physical discomfort, which is something everybody who practices more than a short amount of time will experience, guaranteed. Okay, and one of the things we want to adjust is perhaps time and expectation. Those are a couple of things that we want to adjust in our meditation practice. And I'll explain. Time meaning how much time am I going to sit before it ends up just being sort of a struggle to get through the hour, half hour, or 20 minutes, or however much I've set. And if it ends up just being that I'm doing it just to get to that time, that's self-defeating. It's just not, you create an obstacle. It's an external thing. So adjusting the time to something a little more manageable, that you know what, I know I'm going to experience pain, and I'm going to adjust the time so that I can maintain some awareness of it and look more deeply, either at the pain or at my breath, for this amount of time before it starts to be like it's all about the pain and just my hope that it'll change and go away. So I would adjust the time a little bit. And then the other thing is expectation or focus. First of all, expectation, we tend to think that if I'm aware and looking at something, it'll make things better. Not necessarily, but we can start to explore not only the pain, but we start to see everything around the pain, my reactions to it, my thoughts that are coming up. The impermanence is not necessarily just about the physical sensation itself. That's a gross level of impermanence. Gross meaning like not fine as opposed to fine. Now, gross level of impermanence is, okay, it's either hurting or it's not hurting. But if you look very closely at it, and that's why I say, limit the time. Like, can I, when it starts to really hurt, can I spend 2 minutes looking in a microscopic way, very close at the point of pain itself? And what happens when I keep my mind there? What happens to that pain? Where do I see it? Do I notice anything different in that experience of pain, in that phenomena of pain? Does it shift? Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it, tightening? Is it spreading? Is it getting worse? Change could be that it gets worse. We're hoping that the change will be that it'll go away. Maybe it'll get worse. And maybe we're looking in a gross, like not fine way, not a subtle way. But if you look really closely, does it shift? Does it get worse? So yeah, there might be impermanence. Look, when we die, the impermanence there is not that we're going to start feeling better. We're probably going to feel worse and worse and worse until we die. But there's impermanence there, it's true. But it's not necessarily what we hoped and expected impermanence would be, that it would be like getting easier. So again, practice is not necessarily aimed at that we feel comfortable, but that we start to accept that things are not going to go my way. Things are not necessarily going to go my way. And I start to sharpen that awareness in meditation. And for you, a painful meditation. And that's why I'm saying, limit the amount of time. Place your focus on the point that is calling you, because it's really shouting at you. And then end the meditation. Right? So that's what I'm saying, limit it and focus it. The other thing that you can do in terms of breathing and mindfulness meditation of present experience is to, especially if someone has, like yourself, has chronic pain, and it may be from whatever physical condition, sitting is not the only practice of developing mindfulness. It is not the only practice. You may find that the pain is less when you do lying down meditation. You might want to lie down and do body scan and then focus on breath. Lying down is one of the traditional postures. You may want to do standing. You may want to do walking. So that's why, so that's the second approach I would offer, is to explore different postures of meditation. And in addition to, what I said about this sitting.
Thank you.
What about not meditating? Are there, if I understood, people that go on the path to enlightenment and Buddhist path who don't meditate, without the practice of meditation? Does that happen? Is it that the path can be taken without the practice of meditation? And then what, if so, what is the emphasis of the other practice that people take to reach enlightenment if they don't meditate?
Well, I'm sure there are people, but I don't know any. But I think there are different traditions with different practices. Whether meditation is the main practice or not that's a variable. But I think the constant, there's a variable and there's a constant. I think the constant is that there is a spiritual practice with the intention to awaken. And it may not be in those words. It may be, somebody who wants to realize the divine and does it through prayer, or somebody who wants to, I don't know. I think that there are different traditions teach different practices, and meditation is the central Buddhist one, one of the central Buddhist ones, if not the central Buddhist one. But I know that in some Buddhist, within some Buddhist traditions, meditation has a much smaller emphasis and role.
And then in those traditions, what is the emphasis then?
Well, for instance, in Tibetan, there would be a lot of mantras, a lot of pujas, a lot of offerings, and a lot of ritual activities, like, going on pilgrimage or circumambulating around monuments, or even just accumulating merit. For instance, even in some Theravada traditions, meditation, if you're not a monk, is not a way to, is not practiced so much, or the way that's talked about becoming, more awakened, but it's more by doing acts that create merit. And those acts might be giving to others, giving to the monastery, helping, whatever. So there's activities that create, sort of merit in the Theravada that are not necessarily meditation. There's all sorts of activities in a tradition like Tibetan, that is, including art, that are considered enlightened, or activities that lead towards developing an enlightened mind. Yeah. So meditation, I think we have to more step back and say, what is it doing? And it's trying to cultivate a type of awareness and mind. And it's not, that awareness and mind is not owned by meditation. Meditation is a means. Okay, so what else can open up a type of very, very broad, open, aware, present, caring, compassionate state of mind that sees unity and not division, that is realizing emptiness of self and fullness of other? So what kind of activities do that? And if that's your question, you'll find them. If that's the intention, then you'll find those activities, if that's the criteria. So yeah, meditation, some people elevate it to something that is almost magical. But I find it very effective, but I don't see it as, the only way. And if so, then, the world's lost.
And
But I do think that we are talking about, for lack of a better term, a contemplative or spiritual practice, whatever it may be. And spiritual just means something that's trying to get beyond our material attachments. The duality we usually talk about is material and spiritual, and ultimately, like samsara and nirvana. And ultimately, we want to see them as one. That samsara and nirvana, that the spiritual and the material are one thing. But until we find that unity, we're still working within these two different things. So like we go through our shopping and we don't have an awareness, and we clean our house and we're not aware, we feel like we're just dealing with the things, and we want to get to our spiritual practice. But ultimately we want to see them that, doing the dishes and shopping and, washing my car are enlightened activities that are a spiritual practice. But until I get there, I'm still having to deal with these two sides. So.
Okay, just one thing that came up when you were giving the answer was that we see ourselves as empty and we see others as full. Did you say something like that? We see ourselves empty and we see others as full, or something of the sort. You said a sentence like that. I was wondering the meaning.
Yeah, so I think what I was talking about was the state of mind that we want to do is, that we want to create, is empty of self, but full of others. So we want our state of mind to release our attachment to me, but to be full of my connection to others. That's it. So the fullness, emptiness of self, fullness of world. That my sense of self is really about being part of this world and not just about the world being, for me.
Mhm.
So emptying my self-attachment and my self-permanence in order to fill myself, to be full of the reality of others.
Okay, and the last thing, just to when you don't practice meditation, for example, if you could not do that, what would you choose from the other practice that you think is important for being more awake from the path, that we have different things to practice? And you said, okay, I have more time now because I'm not practicing meditation. Where would you put more your emphasis on other content that might affect your mind in the way that you're more awakened in the practice? So one of the other things that we practice, I mean, I don't want to name them because I don't want to make a lot of mistakes, because I'm quite a beginner in the terms, in the Buddhist terms of practice. So things that have numbers, 4, 8, things like that. If that makes sense, what I said now. Because there are a lot of practice which have numbers, 4, 8. So that's what my meaning. If there are particular things within those things that you would put more attention to, because you think those are helpful to awake, even without the possibility, let's say, to meditate. This is the last thing, just to wrap up the question, because it is in one question, just to understand it a little bit better.
Well, I think what I'd like to do, instead of answering it for myself, because I think that the practice of meditation is, as you say, it's one of the practices, and with the intention to awaken and to be more caring and heartful. The challenge then is, what else will lead to that? So I'm going to extend your question to others who are with us now and simply ask, outside of meditation, what helps you to become less self-centered and more loving and more aware of your experience in a non-attached way?
I would say that it has to do with being mindful in those very moments, but not as an intentional and conscious practice of meditation, but more of the result of a long-term practice that gets in time, like this muscle of mindfulness, if you want to call it that, becomes more operative in time and helps in everyday situations to rely on it more. And once mindfulness pervades the mindset that I'm in, it's easier to be less self-centered. in the moment.
Jonathan, is it okay that I speak with Jonathan? Because yeah, then I think that what you answered is still, the answer was meditation. It's just you based it on meditation that you did, and you said that you trained your muscles, and now you're able to basically be in a state of kind of daily meditation, moment to moment meditation, even without meditating. And that is, of course, I think an amazing, great thing. But my question was not on that muscle, not on the ability of clearing and awareness and seeing, but more to see on the other part, which we have maybe the I don't know what to call it, the koans or the path of 8 and 4, and so like the theory. How does the theory clicks in your head to think, okay, then I need to do this and this and this in the theory, and then to incorporate it in your thoughts and your daily life to make a change without, for example, having the muscle of the meditation or the meditation itself, but to have the knowledge and understanding of other things that can lead to being awake by having right thoughts and so on. If that is clear, yeah.
Can I maybe attempt at a response? I think for me, if you're really, I think what you're saying is it's a bit contradictory. I think you can meditate. The point of meditation is to develop that mindfulness that then we kind of carry on to our daily life and not just automatically go through the world, but really kind of stop and pay attention and almost take yourself out. As Daniel said, I think that's a great metaphor, like watching a film. And I think if you really want to kind of step out of a meditation, what I kind of do, and I don't know if that to you would be meditative, is if you talk about the Eightfold Path, I kind of keep thinking, okay, am what I'm doing causing or relieving suffering? If I say this, will this cause suffering? Will it relieve it? Will it not make a change? If I do this, will it cause suffering? Will it relieve it? Will it not make a change? And kind of just be more aware of my effect moving through this web of connection and interdependency, and understanding that whatever you kind of stone or pebble that you throw into the pond will have a ripple effect. And kind of just hope that by reading the situation, the ripples that you send out would be ones of a positive impact, or at least neutral impact, and not ones that will cause suffering to others or to myself. And then if I do something or say something that I find that did cause suffering to myself or to others, I kind of try to reflect on it. Why did I do it? What could I have done differently? What can I learn from it moving forward? How can I react differently in a similar situation, and so on? Sorry, just a moment. Sorry. Had a knock on the door. So I don't know if that kind of answers your question about it maybe not being as meditative, but it's still very much mindfulness, which I think you can't really escape in the Buddhist practice.
Yes, it does. It is more the answer that I was aiming for, to ask what are the things that you can put as a thought process that will lead you in a path to awaken and enlightenment, putting aside the actual meditation clearing of the mind. And of course, you can say that everything all the time, what we think and so on, can be kind of connected, because once we are aware of something, it's a sort of meditation. But there is some distance between the practice of meditation and the benefit of daily life, then what you're saying, so you have chosen one of
I mean,
the thoughts that for you
think
is the
I think
most
it's just being
important.
aware. I think it's just being aware, just being mindful and aware.
Okay, now you're less answering the question, but what you said before is because awareness is more what Jonathan, I think, said, which is the part of the meditation in the daily moment. But you said other things. You started to talk about theory in practice. You said, is my thought causing suffering or not, to me or to others in repose? And for you, for example, that particular thing that came up perhaps is one of the important things that leads to awakening. And that was my meaning. What are these things that maybe are the most important that can lead more to awakening? So for you, that was the thought that came. Is it giving me
I mean,
or
take it
others
with a grain of
suffering?
salt. Yeah, I'm not a
That is
teacher.
an answer. Sorry?
I'm saying take it with a grain of salt. I'm not a teacher.
No, that is your answer. So so for you, that
Daniel can confirm.
is the important thing to lead to awaken. Maybe it's different for each thing, and maybe Daniel says, okay, there are these three things which are the main pillars to have as a thought process that are important to make a switch from a person that will live his life, and a person that if he has these thoughts which he filters the world through, then he is on a path for enlightenment, and without even having a lot of practice in meditation. So yeah.
I think if I can add my my 2 cents, I think it's worth like really looking at the kind of the core, going over the basics, the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, just kind of becoming really familiar with it. Like, what is it? What is said there? What is written there? Because I think you connect the practice of meditation, which is more, the way I see it, can be understood more as a form, a certain form, with certain qualities of mindfulness or concentration, which can be achieved with many different forms. But they're definitely, mindfulness and concentration are like an essential part of the Eightfold Path. So realizing freedom, this path that is kind of the heart of Buddhism that leads to freedom, like these are two essential key factors within that path. And then how you practice them and develop them. So there are different forms in different traditions. So maybe you can find an answer if you just go over the Eightfold Path and Four Noble Truths. Like, I think that's a really good source to expand. And I also wanted to add, it doesn't connect to your question, Asaf, but it's really good to see everybody. And I was really kind of moved by this passage. It's so short and simple, but it just, there's something so beautiful about it, about the way that the Buddha kind of very simply talks about liberation. Like, this is really, it really touches something very deep. And I don't know, for me, this is really a really inspiring passage. Also to think that it came through over like generations and thousands of years, and now we're sitting here and talking about this insight that the Buddha had, or spiritual practitioners before him maybe even had, and it feels to me like a really revolutionary thing. So I'm really just wanting to share this this sentiment.
Daniel, could I ask a quick question about karma? It's not 100% related. So I had a friend who we were talking about, she's not a Buddhist, but she was asking me questions. And then she said, we were talking about karma. And as we all know, karma, like our situation now is a result of the karma we've accumulated, either in this and previous lives. So she asked me, so if someone's suffering, if I'm seeing someone suffering right now, does that mean they deserve it? Because they've done something in their past life or in this life that meant that they deserve to suffer now. And that felt really wrong for me. Like, I don't feel karma is vindictive or, you know, kind of like, you know, karma's a bitch type of thing. But I failed to like find the words to express to her or explain to her the unvindictive nature of karma. And I was just wondering, I'm sorry if this is like a really basic question. But I kind of, it's been on my mind for a few weeks now, and I kind of couldn't really make sense or how to put it into words.
It's not actually a basic question. It's probably a question that is a very troubling and deep one, especially when we see innocent people suffering, like children. And, you know, you'd be pretty cruel to say that a child who is, you know, crippled by a bomb in a war deserved it somehow because last life he was bad. I mean, what kind of evil person would say that? But that, you know, if you were thinking karma that way, then you would have to say that, wouldn't you? But you wouldn't want to say that. So it's not a simple question if we understand karma that way. But we don't understand the karma that way because it's not our job to judge the karma of someone else. And it's not our ability to judge the karma of someone else, because karma is so deep and complex and interwoven with so many causes and conditions and so many factors that's beyond just one person who's the master of his or her life. Nobody is the master of his or her life when we're talking about, you know, all the karmic influences. So it is absolutely impossible for us to be able to judge or know the reasons for someone else's reality. The only responsibility we have is to probe deeply the reasons, sources, and potential of my own karma. It's my karma that I'm responsible for, not his. So we're not here to solve their karma, but rather to work on our own karma, to purify our karma, and to end suffering where we see it without trying to explain it. So that's sort of the, what I would say, the basic answer to a not basic question.
Yeah, it's interesting because, yeah, thank you. I'll ponder on that. I'll meditate on it. Thank you.
Yeah. The Buddha, when the Buddha was enlightened under the Bodhi tree, according to the stories, one of the things that happened in I think the first or second watch of the night was he was able to see into all of his past lives, and he understood all of his karma and everything. And then on the deepest level, he saw the karma of everyone. He was able to see it deeply. That was the Buddha when he was becoming awakened. We cannot presume to know why someone is going through something. You know, an awakened person might have some insight, but the rest of us are just here to help. It is ending and it's getting late. The one thing I want to add is to the previous question, and this is actually for Asaf and for anyone else. We're talking about practices apart from meditation that will help your mind develop into freedom. There are basic practices. Most of the ones I know are Buddhist ones. Taking precepts, taking commitments and promises to yourself and others, not to harm, not to lie, not to steal, not to use intoxicants, not to have harmful sexuality. Those are practices that will start to affect the mind. They're called the 5 precepts. Those 5 precepts are basic practices. They're practices of living life in a way that is causing less harm. That's a practice that is not meditation. It's an intention to cease harm, the harm that I cause by living in this world. As a practice, it will start to purify your mind. So that's one practice right there, or 5 of them, if you wish. That's called the practice of taking precepts, which are promises to oneself and to the life you want to live. Okay. There's the practice of study, which is what Gal was referring to, meaning studying the Dharma or studying other spiritual sources, just to keep your mind thinking about helpful things and not just about, politics or whatever we get upset about in the world that we read and bother us. But if you're going to read something, read things that are going to get your mind thinking in ways that are helpful and expansive. So that's the practice of study. Study as a practice. Okay, you study sources that are going to, open your mind and help develop your heart. There's the practice of liturgy. What is liturgy? We usually do chanting during our at the end of meditations. We don't do it because the Zoom format and the online format just doesn't work in terms of chanting together. But chanting is the practice of going over the same verses every day. That's what it is. It's different from study because you know the verses and sometimes you even have them memorized. But it's repeating verses that are impressing on your mind and heart their meaning. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Desires are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. The dharmas of balance. I vow to master them. The Buddha way is unattainable. I vow to attain it. There's different versions to the Bodhisattva vows. But that's a chant that we repeat every day. Like the Heart Sutra is a chant. Those are just the Zen ones that I know and do. But there's other chants in Buddhism or in other traditions. There are chants. And what they're doing by repeating something on a daily basis, verses that they impress upon the heart, a certain rhythm and meaning. So that's the practice of, and a third practice, not meditation, is liturgy. Okay, so we have precepts, we have study, we have liturgy. There's body practice. Body practice is practicing with the body to have a healthy existence. So when you're wanting to become physically fit and supple in terms of doing yoga or exercise, you're doing it not just to be strong, but you're doing it as a body practice. And the body practice is in order to have a healthy container for this life, just in the same way that we wash our clothes to have our clothes clean and we keep them in good repair if they have a hole. So too, our body is this container that we have while we're here on this earth. And we do body practice to keep it healthy. Eating is a part of body practice. So when you're eating as a way of, giving energy and nutrition, not only to your physical life, but to your mental and spiritual life, then eating becomes a practice, not a meditation practice. but it's a mindful practice with intention. The background of all of these practices is the intention we bring into it. And that's why I talk about intention when I talk about meditation. If you do meditation without intention, it's just relaxation. If you do it with intention, it's liberating. If you just cook and eat without any intention, okay, it's just desire. But if you cook and eat with intention, it's nourishing your spiritual life. So all of these can be practices or they can just be activities. How to turn an activity into a practice is by inviting a heartful, compassionate, and kind intention into it. May my life be lived to harm less and to help more. That's one of the intentions brought in here. So those are four, very common practices we can go into. There's a practice of when we go into the paramitas, the great qualities, the practice of dana, which is giving. So giving is a wonderful thing. Giving is a wonderful thing. And giving can be on a material level of giving money to those who need. It can be on a material level of giving things. It can be on giving time. It can be giving your ear to somebody who needs you to hear them. It can just be giving your attention to somebody who's speaking. It can be all sorts of giving. Okay, it can be giving some compassion to somebody you see having a hard time. It can be helping in any way. But as a practice, dana, you start to see during your daily life is something that you find more opportunity for if you take it on as a practice. I'm committing myself to practice more dana today. How can I help? What can I do to give today? You set out from the start of the day and you look for opportunities. That's the fifth practice. I can go on, but I'm saying that practices that don't involve just sitting and mindful breathing exist. Okay, and they all are founded upon the part of the Eightfold Path, which is called right intention, and we bring right intention into that. Right, we bring mindfulness into that, but mindfulness is not about meditation. Mindfulness is about bringing intention, awareness, and presence into whatever activity you're doing. So I just wanted to relate to that, because I think there are many options, and depending on the energy and awareness and devotion you bring into them, they will lead more quickly or not into an awakened mind. So that's where I want to finish for tonight, because the time has passed. And I think I really do want to, for the future, keep the last half hour or so for questions and discussion, because I think it's fruitful and helpful. And I want people to, if you didn't get to ask your question tonight, then you can either write to me or you can save it for next week. And I'll be happy to relate to it. Yeah, and that's it for now. So let us finish with a minute to sit quietly and to collect our attention. Let the words pass. And I close with a dedication. May this practice of tonight that we all shared, we dedicate it to the welfare of all others. May we live our lives in such a way that is of benefit. So thank you everyone for your practice tonight. I was really happy to sit with you, and I hope your week goes well.